Hi, everybody. Toni Marcolini. Welcome to the podcast. It may interest you to know. I'm so excited because returning to the podcast, as I think I called them last time, and I stick with my description, Hollywood legends, Hollywood royalty, Mike Farrell and Shelley Fabares. Welcome back.
Thank you very much,
Toni. Very, very nice to be back. We enjoyed our last time with you a lot, and we're looking forward to this time as well. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what I did since the last time? Because I had watched a movie you had done with James Caan. Yeah, you know right away, right? Brian's song.
Right.
And I had watched it years ago, and I guess I didn't really have a solid recollection of how good the movie was. And I think I saw it when I was much younger and truly didn't appreciate kind of the cinematic brilliance to it. So I went back in between your last podcast and now, and I rewatched the movie.
Oh, did you? Oh, right? That's nice.
And I made the mistake of watching it like in the middle of the night. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, I understand. Yeah. I'm like crying and completely losing it in the middle of the night. It's a tearjerker. So I guess I have a few questions I have to ask. How'd you get through that last scene?
Well, the whole experience was just remarkable. I will say that those of us who were involved with the movie, we had no idea that it was going to be as profoundly impactful as it was. It was very moving to us. We all loved the story and felt terrible about the story, but it just was amazing to us that it had the effect that it did. And that was, of course, before Michel Legrand's movie music was put into the movie, which all I have to hear are the first opening strains of his music. And it doesn't matter how many times I've seen the movie, I start to cry immediately. So you were crying in the middle of the night. I was crying whenever I started watching it. It's anyway, I don't have a good answer for you how I got through any of the scenes. It's not something that was easy for me. I've never been a good crier on screen. There's some people who are just great at it. You can go like that and their tears are pouring down. That's not me. So I was always nervous about it, but the story was so affecting that I just paid attention to what we were saying and what we were talking about in the scenes, and that enabled me to do it, I guess.
Sure. I mean, it's a beautiful movie. It's really well done. I believe it's still listed as the most popular TV movie ever.
Excepting MASH, excepting the last episode of MASH.
Oh, that's right. You'd consider that's a movie. That's right.
Yes.
We talked about that, Mike, I think the first time you were on. Actually, they shot that as a movie, not to have it be part of the series.
Yeah, that was Toni's a concern, that they were afraid it would take people away from the series in rerun.
Right, like The Fugitive. That's right. We talked about that.
It is considered. It's held in great regard by a lot of people, and I was sitting next to Gale Sayers, and I couldn't believe that I was sitting next to him. It just was. I was thrilled to have met him, but to be sitting next to him watching this movie was just an incredible experience. That's much longer than what you asked me. So I'll stop answering.
It's all good. No, I mean, it is a remarkable movie. I actually wondered if you had met any of the key players. If you met Joy. No, you didn't. Wow.
No, I didn't meet Joy. I didn't. To this day, I have not met Joy. She did come to. They were shooting some of the football sequences in Rensselaer, Indiana, and my understanding is that Joy came out there right at the beginning of shooting, but I was not involved at that. I mean, I was involved in the movie, but not at that time. So I never met any of them, and. So for me, Brian is Jimmy Caan, and Billy D. Williams is Gail.
Yeah,
just
Gail. I mean, the movie it chronicles really. I think it was Gale Sayers' book, and he had a chapter in there about his friendship with Brian Piccolo and Brian's battle with cancer.
Yes.
And really it's the end, of Brian's life that's mostly highlighted. And of course you played Brian's wife. So I mean there's not a lot of funny scenes in this movie. I mean it's all pretty dramatic. And it ends, of course, I'm not really spoiling it, I don't think, but it ends with his death. And there's just a beautiful scene at the end when he ultimately passes and you're all in the hospital room. And I cried through the whole scene.
Oh,
So I think it's how do you film that? I mean, it must be very real to you at the time, even though I understand the concept of, that you're acting and they'll call cut and you walk away. I have to keep telling myself, that while I'm watching it. But at the same time, I mean, it must feel real in the scene.
it absolutely did. A lot of that had to do with the writing. The script was written by Bill Blinn, and the way he wrote all the scenes, which were very similar to what happened in Brian's life with Gail, but it was profoundly moving to do. And Jimmy was so good in the scenes that you're talking about. He was good in everything. He was Brian. He was just great. But in that scene in the hospital, it was devastating to do. You just had to stay focused on the reality of what the reality of the movie was, or of the scene was. And anyway, to this day, I've had so many tremendous experiences working, but I'm prouder of being part of Brian's song than I am of anything else. It was an honor to be part of it, and continues to be so.
Agreed. I mean, it's a magnificent piece of work, and it's still honored and somewhat revered even till today. It was beautiful. It was well done. I thought you played that end scene very poignant, because it could have been. It wasn't like hysterical crying. There was just such a crumbling, an inner crumbling that kind of came through to your performance. So,
thank you. Toni, thank you very, very much. That's thrilling to hear from you. So thank you. I'm sort of blushing. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Mike, since the last time I met, I saw, I guess it was, you call it a rerun, but I saw a movie that you had done called Vanishing Act.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if you remember it or not.
Sure.
But you play the bad guy, really.
How dare I?
It's so different than any other role I've personally really ever seen you in. Although I did see you in Mannix once, and I think you ultimately played the bad guy in an episode of Mannix. Actually, you both did Mannix, but at different times, not the same episode.
That's right. Absolutely.
Which was a good show, and it's especially in its day, that was a pretty big, popular action adventure kind of show. And cheers for Mannix. It was great, a great show. But I saw you in Vanishing Act, and you're very normal throughout most of it. And the good guy, boy next door husband that we all know and love. And then bam, you were the bad guy all along.
Right.
That was kind of interesting. How was it like to play that character?
Oh, that's more fun. It's more fun to play the bad guy than it is to play the good guy most of the time.
It's true.
It's finding a way to make that real, finding a way to identify at least with something in a person that makes that happen, or makes, in my case, him willing to do something like that. It's really sort of a hoot.
I interviewed Scott Bryce, an actor, and he had to play a villain. And he said his father gave him advice and said, the best way to play the villain is to not believe you're the villain, right? Because all villains don't believe they're doing anything wrong. They all believe they're justified in what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's Scott's father gave good advice.
So I guess that's, how you do it. But I was so shocked, because I'm used to, you're very clean cut, in even the roles you play, you're always pretty decent, honest people. And you really lulled me into a false sense of trusting you up until the very end. So it was a good movie. I really enjoyed it. And I had to just throw it out there, because I had to say it was kind of nice seeing you play that role. And you shocked me, and you did surprise me at the end.
Well, that's high praise. Thank you.
I agree with you. I always want Mike to play more bad guys because he presents himself and as he is so much differently than a bad guy. And it makes the bad guy so much more interesting. I mean, I think Mike is great at doing it because as you didn't get it right away that he was the bad guy or until almost the end, that's wonderful for audiences, you know, not to know that that person is the bad guy. And he's just great at it because he still comes across as so nice, you know, and so normal and all of those things. And then he turns out to be the really bad guy. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it was a little shocking. I mean, I watched the whole, I hadn't seen it before. I didn't suspect it was him. I mean, I completely fell for it up until the end. And that's why I had to mention it. I was like, it was kind of nice. I mean, it was a weird twist. It was almost like when I saw Mark Harmon, he plays, I think it was the son of Sam. I mean, I think he plays the killer, and you know, I had seen him only in positive things, you know, and you know, very, you know, happy, romance oriented films and TV shows prior to that. And then when I saw him murdering people, I couldn't watch him in anything else after that for years.
Well, didn't Mark play Ted Bundy?
Yeah. Oh, it was
Yeah.
Ted Bundy. You're right. I'm so
Right.
sorry. I knew it was one of those murdering, you know,
Oh,
serial
gotcha.
killers.
Yeah.
But I remember watching him, like they actually filmed, you know, recreated some of the murder scenes, and I could not. After that, it was years before I could see him again. It's hard when you see somebody that you picture one way, and then you see them in this really creepy role, and then you're like, wow, so they have that creepness in them, right?
That just means he has a good actor in him.
Yeah.
And Mike worked with him and did several episodes of NCIS, and he's just a wonderful guy, really kind and good. So all of your original assessments of him were correct. You can, I'm sure you watch him again now, but you can go ahead and watch him again in case you.
I do, but he gave me the chills when I saw him after that for a little while. And I sort of thought of that. So you don't actually see too much, you know, blood and gore kind of thing with you in the movie, but you played it with a very, by the end, there was an eeriness to it, you know, that I give you kudos for. Speaking of scary, I have to say, Shelley, Twilight Zone. You did a Twilight Zone episode. What was that like? That's so different.
Yes. I'll tell you what I remember most about doing that. I don't even remember what year I did that show, but I remember doing it, and Lee Kinsolving played the Martian, and but I remember, this is just so vain, but we were shooting the television show out on the back lot of MGM, and it was very humid, kind of moist weather. And at that time, all I could think about when we were doing the scenes, I can't tell this to any other actors, so if any other actors are listening to this, don't pay attention to this, but all I could think about was my hair was curling up, and I was still wearing my hair straight at that time, but it was curling up just horrible. And I kept thinking, when is this scene going to end? My hair is just going to be huge. Anyway, so that's my main memory of Twilight Zone. And it was after that I became a big fan, like most everybody else, of the show itself and of Rod Serling. I mean, he was brilliant, and so it wasn't scary to do. As I said, I was scared about my hair; so embarrassing. But it wasn't. You know, Lee was a nice guy, so it was fun. It was fun to do. It really was.
What did you think when you read that script?
I thought it was just strange. The idea of, I mean, strange good, but the idea of people coming from another planet, it was not something that was in my vernacular at that time. And yeah, I just thought it was really good. As I said, I hadn't watched a lot of Twilight Zones before that time. And so I wasn't that aware of how creepy and scary that show could be at times. But again, when you're filming it, just like we weren't aware about Brian's song being as powerful as it was, it's not as scary when you're doing it, because you are on the back lot and all the cameras are around, and so you don't have that same experience as people do watching it, which is good, I guess.
Do you read a science fiction or have any, how do you feel? I mean, I'm very not into, I mean, that's not my genre at all. It's probably the only thing I don't really read.
I'm not a science fiction fan either, and I don't, really scary movies and scary stories and science fiction, it scares me. So I sort of stay away from it. Yeah, I do. I'm with you.
I wanted to touch on, because I know you guys both did some work, I think, with Betty White, with her animal rights, and I think a charity that she had. And since she's passed since the last time we got together, and I thought I just would like to bring a little attention to that.
Well, you did more with Betty, so you should go first.
Betty did a show, I would think one of her earliest shows, Life with Elizabeth.
Yes.
And they shot it in Hollywood at a stage that's no longer there. And I got to see, I went to the performance of it one time, and I had such a huge crush on her. I thought she was phenomenal. I thought she was wonderful, funny, attractive, just, everything. And then watching her go sort of plummet to this to stardom in the industry was really a thrill. And then we worked together, I'm thinking, on Providence, where I played the vet.
Oh.
And she either came and visited on the set, or we worked together. My mind has gone south on me on that where the relationship was, but she was there certainly, and just the doll, just as sweet, and people always say she was the same off camera as she was on camera, just funny and lively and full of hell, and ready for a joke and ready to mix it up. But her love, well, beyond her husband of many, many years, was animal care, animal welfare. She was just an absolutely dedicated to it.
And I was around her for some of those
Charity events. Yeah.
Thank you. Boy, it's good to have the two of you here, because when I can't think of a word, one of the two of you tells me what it is. Yes, it's some of her charity events. But like everybody else, I don't know anybody who's ever worked with her or just watched her. Everybody loved and loves Betty White.
Yeah.
It was the feeling of closeness and tenderness that everybody had towards her is it was not exaggerated in any of the reports about it. She was a remarkable woman and just beloved for her talent, but mostly for her heart. She was a great person. Yeah.
Loretta Swit is who played Hot Lips, and who played Margaret on MASH. Is also a major animal rights person and worked with Betty. There's an organization here that we got involved with to some degree called Actors and Others for Animals. Earl Holliman ran it for many, many years. And Jackie Joseph and Loretta and Betty were very involved in it. So a lot of actors were deeply involved in this whole notion of humane care for animals and making sure that strays were taken care of, and that people kept an awareness, I guess, of I always laugh. Some people get very anxious about it. I was making a speech one time about human rights, and it's a concern of mine, and I've traveled a lot in pursuit of the understanding of human rights. And a guy in the back of the audience jumped up and said, human rights, human rights. what about animal rights? Don't you care about animal rights? And I said, of course I do. The subject today, of course, is human rights. But
Yeah.
I'm a vegan. Does that count?
It counts. So am I.
Right.
So it counts. We also, before I go into the interview anymore, while it's on my mind, we have to give a shout out to a young artist from Germany. Her name is Steffi, and I believe she goes, and I want to get this wrong, Larkinston 89 is her tag, but I'm going to put all of her links in the below the video, who painted a gorgeous portrait of you. And she did, and as well as several other members of the cast. She did just a beautiful job, and she was very gracious. She sent a copy, and I just want to give her a shout out. She does amazing work. We're going to put her links. Everybody should check it out. I know she sent her thanks to you and the cast for being so lovely to her and acknowledging the work that she did. But equally, I'd like to give a shout out to her for being so generous. And really, I thought she did almost every cast member, I think. And she really captured it so beautifully in her portraits.
She really did. I was very impressed. I think Loretta got a picture from her first and sent it to me. Said, "Do you believe this is a painting?" And then I got somebody sent me one of me and one of Jamie, and just a number of them she's done. And I circulated them to, I have a little kind of group, I don't know what you call it, put it in.
Like a group thread.
Our bunch from the show, the actors and the producers and writers who are still with us. And I said, you should see these things. They're really quite wonderful. And we sent her a thanks, and she was very gracious in response. I guess I didn't remember she was from Germany, but not that it matters in the world today. You talk to people on another continent or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, she is from Germany, and just didn't want the interview to go. I didn't want to forget what was in my head. I was afraid if I waited till the end, I just would be right out. Also, Shelley, I didn't realize, I had always heard that you were friends with Annette Funicello, but I didn't realize that you had actually done a show with her.
Yes. Annette and I first met because we were in catechism class. We were both going to make
No.
Yes, really. And it was, again, like everybody else, I was mad for Annette, and I watched the Mickey Mouse Club every single day, ran home from school and watched it. And Doreen Tracy, who was also one of the Musketeers, had gone to Blessed Sacrament, the Catholic school that I went to. And, but by that time I was in, this is more than you need to know, but by that time I was in public school. And therefore I had to take catechism class to do confirmation. And Doreen came into the class. This was done like after school. And Doreen came into the class, and I started to wave hello to her. But behind her walked in Annette. And I just went, well, I didn't say anything. I thought I was going to pass out because it was Annette. She was there. So that's where she and I first met. And we became, shortly after that, I was cast to play my character's name. I don't know why I remember this name more than almost any other, but her name was Moselle Corey. I don't know, but
I stand out.
Yeah, right. And she was playing a girl from the country and came into town to live with her aunt and uncle, I believe. And I was one of the mean town girls who treated her very badly. But that's where we really started to become friends. So it was based in the catechism classes, and then went on to the show. And it was thrilling. I just, besides the fact that we became best friends, she was like the dream person, and there she was, and she was as wonderful as everybody hoped that she was. She was an amazing woman.
Sure, and I believe you stayed friends all of her life.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yes, I was there with her when she passed away. So, I mean, it was from almost the very beginning to the very end.
Sure. I mean, and you did so many different roles that, I mean, I was stunned even in preparing how many people you had worked with. I found out you worked with Fabian,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Another, I mean, 50s kind of icon.
Oh,
What was that
absolutely.
like?
Well, that was, gosh, it was a great experience, as most of my working life has been. But that one we shot in Hawaii, and Fabian, it was called Ride the Wild Surf. I'm sure everybody has a copy of that in their home film library. Don't you? No, I'm kidding. Of course. um, and we were over there for quite a period of time. And Fabian was dear. He's sweet, a sweet guy. And Barbara Eden was one of the, she was the other, actually the main star, and another actress by the name of Susan Hart. And the guys were Fabian and Peter Brown and Tab Hunter. And so it was an interesting cast. And there we all were on the North Shore of Oahu. And excepting for the period of time when Alaska had an earthquake, which almost split Alaska in half, but it brought a tsunami towards Hawaii where we were. And we had to, this is the only time we weren't in this little area where we all lived. They evacuated us to a mountain in back of our places. And excepting for that period of time, we lived together in these little houses around this bay area. Anyway, the whole thing was great. It was a silly, fun movie. And once again, for different reasons, I was enjoying being part of that group too. I've been very lucky. I've had wonderful experiences. And
Oh,
he was darling. He was just darling.
now I definitely want to get to, we had opened it up, I think, a little on Facebook for your fans if they wanted to ask some questions. I want to make sure I get to some of them. So let me just, if you guys don't mind, I know we talked about it off camera. Let me say this before I get into it. We were inundated with questions. We did kind of put it out there. We got hundreds of questions, and it was literally not easy for me to narrow it down. I just want to say that before I start, because I don't want anybody to be offended. And why wasn't my question? So Mike, the first question is going to go to you. Dave wants to know if you started around season 7 or so wearing the pink shirt all the time, and he wants to know if that was some kind of intentional decision or statement you were making.
It began as a red shirt.
Got pink in the wash.
Yes.
Laundered so many times it became a pink shirt. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it gave us a kind of a sense of life, and everything was green, in MASH. And I thought it was just a kind of fun way. It's interesting that some people have taken it as a signal of support for gay rights, and I don't have any problem with that. But that was not uppermost in my mind. It was just a shirt, and it was a way for BJ to be a bit of an individual.
I guess not unlike, it didn't Hawkeye, he had that Hawaiian shirt, right?
Sure, he wore that, and we had funny hats that we wore, and we did all kinds of odd things.
Okay, and also to Mike, Kiernan wants to know, did you know exactly how you were going to portray BJ, or did the character evolve over time?
Well, BJ evolved over time. The one thing, I think I told you this story, when I went to meet them, first of all, I was just terrified. I was under contract to Universal Studio, and there was this question of whether or not Wayne was going to be leaving the show, and they asked to meet me, and I asked my agent if it was legal for me to meet them because I was under contract, and he said, yeah, absolutely, no harm. So I went, and we had a wonderful meeting, but I was just as nervous as a cat. And because this was a show I really held in high regard from what I had seen. And a lot of this stuff I had done, although I'd done some things that I'm proud of, there was a lot of stuff that I was being asked to do at Universal that was a little silly. So when we talked and I was able to put two words together, they at one point said, what I said was, I'm thrilled at the idea of being considered in the event. And they made it very clear where they weren't sure if Wayne was going to leave or not. And they didn't want him to leave because why mess with a successful recipe already? So I said, in the event this happens, my one concern is that I wouldn't want to come in as another actor playing Trapper John. And I just don't think that made sense. And they said, no, you're absolutely right. What we know is we want this guy to be different from the Hawkeye Trapper womanizing kind of bunch. We're going to have build a history for him that he's married and he has even probably a child at home and intends to be faithful. How do you feel about that? I said, are you kidding? How do I feel about modeling fidelity on national television? I think it's a great idea. And we laughed a bit. And so when I came in, they didn't know what they got except me. And I didn't know exactly who BJ was, except we had these rudiments of understandings about who he was, where he came from. And the rest was up to us to create. And we did.
And you did a great job. I mean, he goes down in history, I think, as one of the greatest TV characters ever.
Well, I'll take that to the bank. Thank you.
That's true. Okay, so Shelley, Jeremy wants to know, there was an episode of Coach where you fell off the banister into a wedding cake. How did they film that scene?
They threw me off the banister into the wedding cake.
Wow. Yeah.
Almost. They didn't actually throw me, but it's that was it. They had a stunt double take the main fall from the banister down to the cake, but then in order to photograph me doing it, they had me, I think I was on a ladder or something, and at the very when we started filming that part of it, I fell into the cake from the top of the ladder, and it was great. I mean, I had never done anything quite like that, and I thought this was just fabulous. Excuse me. I was a little disappointed that I didn't get to fall off the banister, but in retrospect, I thought, well, no, that was probably a good idea that it was somebody else. But that was how we did it.
How did you feel? Andrew wants to know, Shelley, how did you feel about moving the plot to Orlando after season 7 of Coach?
At the risk of losing any fans that the show had, the show had a lot of fans. I've never been a big proponent of Florida. I don't like the weather. I don't like the bugs. I don't, it's not my favorite place. And I spend a lot of time there because through my work with the Alzheimer's Association, there were a lot of events in Florida because of the elderly population there. So I speak from a point of view of somebody who didn't live there, but spent a lot of time there. So I wasn't real thrilled that we were going to Orlando. I was thrilled that the show was continuing, and always those things are fun to do. But I would have been much happier to stay in where we were in Minnesota in the cold weather with that was my idea of Coach. As I said, we ended up having a good time, and we didn't film down there a lot, but we were down there to do some of it. So it brought more or less, it brought the character that Katherine Hellman played more into our show, which I always thought was wonderful. She was a terrific actress and was a tremendous person to bring into the show, so that she was there before we went to Florida, but she was there more in Florida. So it was all good.
I have to tell you a
What?
story.
Oh dear, what? Oh dear.
I did a play,
Oh,
national
gosh.
tour of Clarence Darrow, a one man show. And one of the places I played was Florida. And Shelley came to, because I was there for, I don't know how long, Shelley came to to see me. And she kept complaining about all the bugs. You know,
Oh,
Florida's full of bugs, bugs in your underpants, bugs everywhere you go.
I'm with you, Shelley.
oh,
And
excellent.
we were in a hotel, and she got up in the middle of the night to use the restroom or something, and she went in. She said, "Look at this!" And when you turn the light on, the bugs sort of scattered. So she said, "I want to get out of here." And the show ended, and we went home, and she was upstairs here at the house unpacking, opened up her suitcase, and one of those bugs jumped out.
Oh,
And she said, "I never want to go to Florida again in my life."
see, Toni feels exactly, I can just see, she feels exactly like I do about it. Well, I'm telling you, when that thing came flying out of that suitcase, I couldn't, I still can't believe it. When he started telling the story, I thought, oh my God. But yeah, that's what happened. And the addendum to that is that I looked around and I thought, I've got to, forgive me, I've got to kill this thing. It was this big, and it was, okay. So I had this huge dictionary and I'm screaming the whole time, and literally, and I got this book, this dictionary, and I smashed it down onto the flying fortress and I left it there. I don't know. It must have
Sure.
been-
I've done that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one terrible thing was that I finally thought, I've got to pick up this book and put it back on the shelf, and I've got to, da 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 da. And I picked it up screaming again. This is a week later, but knowing that the bug was there. But when I moved the book, the bug was not there. So I never found out. Yeah, right. Again, that's exactly how I looked there. I couldn't believe it. So I don't know where that bug ended up. I don't know, but he wasn't in the foyer of our house. Anyway, that's my Florida story. I'm sorry to everybody in Florida.
I can top your bug story.
Oh, good. Oh, let me hear this.
Okay. So I'm about to get in my vehicle one day, and there's a spider. And for anyone who knows me, spiders are just an absolute panic attack, meltdown for me. And I'm not I can kill almost any other bug, albeit reluctantly, and with the screaming
Yes.
and the shrieking, right? But the spiders for me almost paralyzed me in terms of fear. So I open my car door, and there's a spider on the dashboard, and somebody was walking by, and a couple was actually walking by. They were walking their dog, and I like flagged them down. I was like, here, like, and here's like this, I gave him like a stack of napkins. I was like, would you mind killing the spider for me?
Oh,
I got
God.
some weird looks, right? But he goes and he tries to kill the spider and misses.
Oh.
So the spider runs into the corner now behind the dashboard.
Oh, no.
So now he's like, sorry, and walks away. And I'm like,
Sorry.
Sorry. Like, now you've aggravated it and you've left me with it. And I like have to get to court. There's nothing I can do.
Oh.
So now I have to drive in the vehicle. And the whole time you're driving, like this is my eyes. Like I'm not like circulating. Is it coming out or somewhere? Right? Even after work, I come out to the car. I like flip all the lights to the car. I'm driving fully illuminated like that night. And every day I would come out in the morning and my whole dashboard would be filled with webs.
Oh, no.
Right. So I knew he was still lingering somewhere. And when I wasn't there, he'd fill it with webs. And like you get this, I'd have to clean all the webs away, but he'd never show himself while I was driving. He was just toying with me, sadistically toying with me. So finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I brought the car back because it was leased. I literally traded my lease in early because I couldn't live with the spider tormenting me anymore.
I love that.
And
This
my
is-
last words, I opened it when I was walking away, I opened the door and I was like, how do you like me now? Goodbye, right? And I just shut the door and walked away. That's how psychotic I am about bugs
Oh,
and spiders.
I see. I liked you from the day I met you, but you've just gone up 500 degrees higher.
Yeah, we
in
get
my
each other. We
Yeah,
get each other.
absolutely. Oh, that's a great story. It's frightening, but it's a great
It
story.
is. But people don't believe me when I tell them, but now you will. You understand.
I believe you 100%.
So I have another question for Mike from Kiernan. He said the transition between episodes featuring Trapper and the arrival of your character BJ seemed effortless, but was it that way on set?
Well, I can't speak for everybody else. It was anything but effortless for me. I was terrified. My fear was, well, two. One was that they were a well-known, very highly regarded group ensemble. And I thought the cast is going to hate me for coming in and elbowing their buddy out of the picture. Now, Alan and I had met. Alan did a wonderful thing. The day I got the job, the day it was firmed up that I was the one that they had chosen, he called me and asked if we could have dinner. So we had dinner that night, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. And he never stopped being wonderful. But then the following Monday morning, I went to work and I hadn't met any of the others. And I just thought, maybe there's a feeling that they're going to resent me a little bit for trying to, become one of their group and at the expense of somebody else. Although Wayne had left voluntarily, it wasn't, they didn't want him to go. Anyway, I came to work, and the first person that I saw was Gary Berghoff, who walked up and stuck out his hand and said, "Welcome, glad to have you with us." And he was followed by Loretta and Bill Christopher and Jamie Farr. It was just quite extraordinary, the greeting. So that part of it was great, but it was also, now I've got to work with these people. And, if the thing that kept happening for me was, if this show tanks, if this show goes under in its 4th season, I'm going to wear it around my neck for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know. But I remember, I forgot who it was, came up to me when the ratings came in for when the first show went on the air, said, "You can relax now. We're still up there in the very top of the ratings."
Sure, I would think that would have been like that new kid in school feeling, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's already friends. They're all sitting at the tables together, and you walk into the cafeteria.
Exactly. But it was, I don't know if I told you this story before, but what happened for me, one of the things we did on the show every new episode, we sat down around a table, all of us, and read for the writers and the producers to hear the show, and for us to read the script with each other. And we did that, and that was very unusual. And then at the end of the reading, I think there was applause, which was kind of nice thing. And then Gene, the director at the time, said, "Okay, page 1." And I kind of looked, we had just done that. So I said, I don't know what that means. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, Mike, this is when we go through the script again, page by page, and we want to hear from you guys as to whether or not there's something, you have any questions, any problems, anything you suggest changing, just any ideas, we'd be happy to hear them." I thought, oh my God, I've died and gone to heaven. No, nobody ever in my prior experience as an actor had said, "We're open to hearing from you, the actors, because we respect you and you're part of our creative community here." I thought, holy moly, what have I gotten to be part of? It
And you
was
weren't wrong.
But I'll tell you.
So I have to turn to Shelley and say, what was that experience like on Coach then? I mean, did you feel like that same sense of creative, availability to you, that you were able to help mold Christine, or they were receptive to your ideas?
Yes, it was not quite done exactly the way that MASH was. I don't think anything was ever done exactly like MASH was. But Barry Kemp, who created Coach and wrote all of the characters, etc., and he, along with the other writers and producers of the show, but specifically Barry, was always available and made each person feel very much part of the show. And it's true what Mike said. That's not something that was normally the case. It just wasn't. So while I was there from the beginning with that show, you still are the new kid on the block, because you just, it's the first day of whatever show you're doing. And it's always terrifying. And you always think, you'll always hear actors say this, but it's true. Every person that I know who is an actor or actress, we're all actors now. I've forgotten, we're no longer actresses, it's all actors. So all the other actors have always felt that they were going to be let go by the end of the first day. And I felt that practically for the entire 9 years that we were doing the show. But certainly at the beginning, you can't believe that you're there. And as the experience goes along and gets better and better, it's just hard to believe that you're there and that you get to do this. But always I was made to feel that my ideas were important, and they also let me know that certain attributes that I have, or personality quirks that I have, were wanted as Christine. So they incorporated a lot of what I was as a person into Christine. But Christine was, I have to say, was created by Barry Kemp and was created as a full person. She was allowed to grow as the years went on. But anyway, does that answer your question? I answer these so long, and I get lost in my own answers, and I have no idea if I'm answering what you asked.
No, I love talking to you both. You're just a wealth of knowledge, and you've been involved in so many projects that, are, I mean, they're not only classic, but I mean, they're revered by everybody. So to actually get to speak to people who were there when these things were being created is amazing in and of itself. So I sit in awe of every story you can tell me.
Okay. This is a dangerous thing to have said to me. No, I won't take advantage of it.
Well, the other day I caught a rerun of you on Coach. Film. The episode was Hayden, I guess, was having snoring issues.
Yes.
They're keeping you up at night, and I laughed so hard. I almost fell off the couch. I mean, I must have seen it, I would think, the first time, because I was pretty regular with watching Coach and MASH. So, but I felt like it was the first time I was seeing it. So if I saw it, it wasn't in there. So I felt like it was new.
Right. It's so funny. I was thinking about that particular episode not too long ago.
Really?
With Mike snoring?
Yes. And they had me do a shot with Hayden and Christine were supposed to be in bed and sleeping. And, but you hear Hayden snoring, and they had me come up over his shoulder, just looking at him like I wanted to kill him. And it always makes me laugh when I think about it. And so anyway, I thought, I'd like to see that episode again, because it was fun to do. And I didn't realize that it was a portent of things to come, but it was. I have lurked over him, giving him the devil's eye at times. Oh gosh.
I mean, it was classically funny. I mean, probably some of the best 30 minutes you can spend with your television set. I mean, he snores, and initially you go outside, to just get away from it. You're getting no sleep. You're just kind of raggedy, sleepless woman. And then you come up with these ideas. You must have gone to the store, you go to him and you're like, oh, I have all these ideas. And he's like, I'm not doing that. I mean, you're all but gagging him. You know what I mean? Like you have all these horrible things that you're doing to him. And he says, no, he's not. One's like electrical shock. and the funniest part is you must have hooked it all up. Like you start with one thing while he's sleeping, you must have kept hooking him up. But like by the end, you're wide awake, he's snoring and just jumping from the and like nothing. It's not affecting him at all. But oh, it is so worth watching. It was really funny. And I thought that had to be, I don't even know how you didn't laugh. Like the scene when you see your face and how aggravated you are that he's sound asleep and like nothing, it's not, nothing you've done is affecting him. That look on your face, comedic timing, brilliant. But you held the look without a laugh, and that's to your credit. I don't know. I think I would have been giggling. Like, I think it would have been hard for me to, well, I'm not an actress, obviously, but yeah, that would have been a hard scene to keep my, maybe you were. Did they have, was that a multiple take one? Were you laughing all through it?
Not all through it, but it during the rehearsal time, it just always tickled me no end, because Craig was so great in all of the shows. And that was another one where he was particularly great, and it made me laugh no end. But by the time the show came around to filming in front of an audience, you sort of remembered that this is your job, and they're not interested if you're laughing as a person. They just want Christine's reaction. So yeah, but the giggles were not far behind.
Yeah, I can imagine. It was great. It was great. I give you credit. I love that episode. I had to say that. Because my favorite episode always was the one when you met him in a flashback. And I don't know, I laughed so hard it may have just elbowed it out.
That's I'm delighted that I have fond memories of so many of the shows, if not all of them, but I particularly liked the one about the sleeping. That was great. So I'm thrilled that you liked it so much and that it affected you the way it did. It's great.
Wonderful. Mike, Dave would like to know, the mustache did you intentionally grow the mustache for any particular reason, or was that just, I guess, like, hey, welcome to the 70s kind of thing?
It's a funny way to put it, intentionally. How do you not grow a mustache intentionally?
I guess you were clean shaven before then. Like, did you let it go, by choice, or?
Yes. No, it was either the end of the first season and the beginning of the second, or the end of the second and the beginning of the third. I don't remember. My second and third. Alan called me and he said, they think we're too much alike. What do you think? Would you be willing to grow a mustache? I said, sure, why not? So that was the mustache.
I love that story.
My mother hated it.
Yeah, you do have a different look with it than without it.
Yeah.
I hate to say this because I'm going to get a bunch of hate email now, but I did prefer you without the mustache.
Oh, did you?
I don't know why, but there's just, when you grew the mustache, there was just a darker feel to your character for me. Interesting. I mean, maybe it's that old fashioned, twirling the mustache thing. I don't know. That just stuck in the back of my head, but just your character seemed lighter and funnier in just one way. And then like there became a serious side. Like I felt there was some variation with it. Is that crazy? Am I crazy?
No, but they were coincidental in occurring. The writers and producers made a decision, I think, in year 4 or 5 to go deeper into the characters. They didn't want to repeat the gags and just kind of do the same thing. And so they began to investigate characters. And I think that may have been what you're talking about. It was, I think it was really a smart thing to do, because it allowed us as actors to really get into some very difficult areas, and also to be fair in depicting the circumstances and the people that we were playing. So I thought I
agree. I almost think that absent that, do you last as long as you did, or have the spotlight, on the show. I mean, there's something to taking what's supposed to be a comedy, which of course you found the comedic moments in that place and time. But developing, you became characters that we all felt like we knew and loved, and you were very flawed in your own ways. But yet, I mean, of course, always redeeming qualities, even in the most flawed among you. But I just think that showing that or highlighting that made the show MASH what it is. It made it real. Some of those dramatic moments were so real in watching them. I mean, not that I was in the war, listen to me talking, but I mean, they felt real. They felt, where you got it, that these people experienced not just, playing football outside their tents, but that they experienced some horrific moments that probably remained with them forever. And I thought you captured that with a true highlight on what life looks like, because life looks like that for everything, right? Maybe not even just the war. There are moments along my cancer journey, right, that I can remember, having experienced everything in that moment, where there's a certain element of emotional release or laughter that hits you, even if something's not funny, but it hits you like an emotional release, but where you're experiencing so many things in that moment. That looks like life to me, right? Because it's not always high or low or funny or dramatic. It's kind of everything in a mishmash. And I think to capture that seems so real. And yeah, I think that was a pretty brilliant decision as well.
I think so too, because there's a price people pay for extending themselves and putting themselves in harm's way as these characters, as the people in that real circumstance did, and that we were trying to honor them in the way we were portraying them, and they wrote it larger in the final episode with Mulcahy's losing his hearing and Winchester losing his music and Hawkeye losing his sanity, at least for a while. And I thought there was a brilliance to the minds behind the creation of the show that I always was in awe of.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so Shelley, I have a few questions from Gail, who's a big fan and lifelong big fan of both of you. And she wants to know if you're going to write your autobiography.
Well, first of all, thank you, Gail, for liking our work. We're both happy that we get to be actors and to know that people are watching and enjoy it. So Gail, thank you very much. Well, this is an interesting question for me because Mike and several other people through the years have talked to me about writing a book, and my first reaction is always, oh, please, nobody's going to be interested in reading a book about me, and that's always been my feeling. But
I think you're so wrong. There's such interest, there's such rabid interest in you. You're really wrong there, I think.
That's what Mike says. So you and Mike say the same thing. I keep thinking that I maybe will do it, but do it just for me at the beginning. I can't think of actually writing a book that's going to be published and people are going to read. But if I can get myself to do it, because I do enjoy the stories that I tell, not that I'm telling them, but when I look back on the experiences that I've had, they make me laugh, and some make me cry. But I get it that is of interest. But oh gosh, Gail, I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer this. I may do
maybe.
it. I don't have any maybe, yes. And I'm flattered that you would ask if I were going to do that.
And I keep bugging her that she's really got to do this, because she has a career and a life that is full of things that people will identify with and care about and be moved by. And I think it's a great shame if she doesn't.
When I was doing Coach, one of the longtime memories that I have of the show is my relationship with Jerry Van Dyke. And we
I
used to-
love.
oh,
Oh,
he was hysterical and funny, the funniest person I've ever known. And I've known some really funny people, but Jerry was from another place. And I used to say, and he used to agree with me, that between he and I, we were the two oldest living people in show business. We both had been around so long, and we both had done a lot of series and a lot of stuff. And it just, on that level alone, I think it's amazing that I'm still alive and still around. And Jerry would kind of say the same thing when he was still here with us. And anyway, I get that there may be some interest, but maybe Mike, you, and Gail will be the three people who buy the book and read it. So
No, I think Mike and I are now on Team Gail to promote you doing the. Gail also said, would you tell us the story of how Mike proposed to you?
Oh gosh.
Unless that's a personal story. If that's a private story, then by all means, just, you don't have to answer that.
No, I don't. No, I mean, yes, it is personal and private, but why start now? You know, I mean, anyway, I guess the way I would like to tell the story is that because I don't remember when he said, "Will you marry me?" Do you remember asking me that? I don't remember that, but I remember it just sort of was that we were going to do that. But what happened, the way we got together, is to me the kind of the beginning of our life together. We were in San Francisco, both of us doing this appearance for, he was doing MASH, I was doing One Day at a Time. And they had something called the, I feel like I told you the story before. So if this starts to sound familiar, Toni, you can just go stop. We were there at a, what do they call them? The convention, the
affiliates.
The affiliates meeting for all the people who own television stations across the country were brought into, in this time, at that time, for that show, for that period of time, to San Francisco. Often they were held here in Los Angeles, but the people who were on their shows, new shows and old shows, would go to these affiliate meetings, and they would have a dinner, and you would meet all the different affiliates, and you would da 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 da. So I went, and for One Day at a Time, and Bonnie couldn't go and Valerie couldn't go. So they finally said, "Well, will you go?" And I said, "Well, sure, yes." So I go into this room. They have all the actors going into a room and waiting because we're going to be introduced on the stage from backstage. So I got into the room and I didn't know anybody else there. And I looked across the room and I thought, oh, there's Mike Farrell. And because we had met before, we had worked together once before. And I just always thought, oh, Mike Farrell, he's such a nice person. And whenever I saw him on television or anything, I would always just think, oh, he's so nice. And so I was talking to somebody else, and all of a sudden there was a tap on my shoulder, and I turned around and it was Mike, and he said, hi. And I said, oh, hi. And he said, I just have to tell you something. From the time we worked together, whenever I've seen you or heard your name or seen you on television, he said, I've always thought, Shelley Fabares, what a nice person. And I'm sitting there, my mouth is hanging open, and I don't even know now if I said to him, I've had the same thought about you. I kind of think I didn't say it, but in my head I was going, I can't believe he's saying that to me. That's exactly how I felt about him. Anyway, we go through that whole evening. They keep putting us together because they would line you up alphabetically. So I was Fabares, F-A-B, and he was Farrell. So they put us together. So we're talking before we go out. And he said, is there anybody here that you particularly wanted to meet? And I said, oh my God, yes. I said, there are two people here that I would just faint to meet. One is Charles Kuralt and one is Walter Cronkite. And he said, oh, that's very interesting. Okay, so we're introduced, we're at separate tables, at different tables. And the evening is over with and we're all making our exits. And he's suddenly beside me. And he said, well, did you meet Walter Cronkite? And I said, no. I said, I didn't. And he said, I said, I didn't see him. And he said, well, he said, I'm tall. I'll look around here and see if I can see him. So we spent a bit of time going around looking for Walter Cronkite, whom we did not meet. I did meet Charles Kuralt, which, by the way, when I met him, I was so excited that I was meeting him that I couldn't say anything. They said, oh, Charles would like you to meet Shelley Fabares, this is Charles Kuralt. And I smiled, and he said, well, hello, he was very kind, very nice to meet you. And I said, I couldn't put a sentence together. And I thought, Shelley, this is your one chance. You're meeting Charles Kuralt. You know how you feel about him. I don't know what I probably would have passed out if I had met Walter Cronkite. But with Charles Kuralt, I just thought, you've got to tell him. I never did. I never said a word. I just walked away. It was awful. Anyway, but in the meantime, Mike and I continued out, and he said, we were standing, because they had us staying across the street from where we were for the affiliates meeting at another hotel. And so I was standing there with Mike, we were getting ready to cross the street, and a cable car, we're in San Francisco, a cable car came up the hill. And Mike said, oh, there's a cable car. He said, did you want to go for a ride? And I thought, oh, I can't go for a ride. I don't even really know him. And then I thought, Shelley, he didn't ask you to go to Tahiti. He said, there's a cable car over there. Would you like to have a ride on a cable car? So I said, yes. I said, I'd love to. And I think that was when we didn't get married at that point. It was a couple of years from then, but that really was the beginning of our relationship, and
the magical moment, right?
Was. And for me, that stays with me more than any other moment. That sounds terrible to say. I don't remember. I guess we were in that restaurant. We were in that's where we were. No, Topanga Canyon. Yeah. And he asked me to marry him, and it was very romantic, and it was wonderful, and all of that. But the piece that stays with me is in San Francisco. So that's my answer.
Well, I love that story. It's kind of like that Sleepless in Seattle moment, right? When he's telling the story of how he met his wife, and he's just took her hand to help her into a car, and it was magic. So that's got it was magic to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, it was.
Okay. I have to ask also, Cindy, Shelley would like to know, last time you talked about your movies with Elvis, and you said that clam bake was the most fun. And she wanted to know why you say that.
I think for a couple of reasons. It was, by that time, that was the third movie that we made together. And just speaking for Elvis and for me, there was a comfort level that was there by the time you work with somebody over a number of years or a number of projects. It's very comfortable. We had a darling director on the movie, and who is sweet and funny. And it just was one of those movies that was just absolutely fun to do. It wasn't very good, but we had a wonderful time doing it. And again, I think it was mostly because all of my scenes were with Elvis, because we were simpatico with each other by that time. So it just made it a very happy experience.
Well, Elvis, I think, in interviews said that you were his favorite leading lady. I mean,
I have heard that, I have read it, and it always thrills me that he said that. I know he felt that way, and to this day, that's thrilling to me. And I adored him and loved him and all of those things. But that he had that kind of a feeling for me made me feel really, really good. So thank you for asking that question.
Was that Bill Bixby in that movie, or was that
Yes.
was he in the other one? I can't remember. Spin Out. I thought I can't remember. It was Clambake or Spin Out.
He was in Clambake, and I think actually Bill was in another one that we did, but I'm not sure of that. But he was definitely in Clambake, and he was playing the rich guy that I had set, my character had set her cap for. She wanted to marry a rich man, and uh, oh gosh, my head is jumping around to so many things that happened when we were doing the movie. But Bill was adorable. He was a funny guy, a wonderful actor, I thought, and he was very good in the movie. But I, of course, ended up with Elvis, who in reality, in the movie, was an incredibly wealthy man. And but I fell in love with him and didn't know that he was wealthy. I thought that he was the guy who worked on the cars. That's
Mechanic, yeah.
yeah. And anyway, Bill Bixby went off someplace else, and Elvis and I got married in the movie. Not in the movie, but that's how we ended up. So it was fun.
You know, I think when you say the movies weren't particularly good, or some of them wasn't particularly good, I sometimes I read that. I will hear, well, nobody goes to see that type of movie necessarily because you're expecting to see terms of endearment, right? I mean, you don't go there for an overly dramatic. You spread a lot of joy. Those movies are, and they have just as important a function in my mind as do the dramatic movies that we watch and enjoy. So I do want to give credit to that, even though there is sometimes a criticism. I don't particularly like that criticism, because it has its function, and its function is to spread joy. I kind of defy you to watch it and not not laugh or be singing when you're done. I mean, that's the whole idea. You make people feel good.
You're right. I'm for all of us who were doing those movies, I say thank you. I do always say that, though, because I know they were not considered great movies, but they were great fun to make. And you're right. And people write to me and say, I had such a wonderful time seeing that movie, and everybody has sort of their favorite ones. But you're right. That is what those movies were about. And I think that was achieved by most of the movies that he did. Yes.
Well, I know I've kept you for a really long time, so I guess I have to close the interview out. I'm always sorry to see you go, because I feel like I could talk to you guys for hours and I'd never be even a little bored.
Well, that's very sweet.
That's very, very sweet of you. And you can have us back anytime you want. We kept going, is it today that we're going to meet up with Toni again? We really do enjoy talking with you a great deal. And you're always so effusive in your enjoyment and your caring for both of us. So you make it a very happy experience. So
can I ask you how, Toni, if I may,
Sure.
How you decided to do this podcast, why you are doing it, and how long it's been being done, and how many people you have connected with?
Sure. I mean, I started the podcast in July of 2020. So it's actually not quite a year yet. It's pretty new. And I think initially I used to get a lot of requests. I'm a lawyer, so I used to get a lot of requests to come on different podcasts myself, just for, to add to the dialogue in some level of a legal discussion. And I guess I did a few, and I thought, I could do this. This is interesting. And one thing kind of led to the other. I mean, at that point, I guess made a decision, like, well, why don't I try myself? I knew a decent amount of people in the entertainment industry, and I said, well, I'm going to just try and see if I like it. And I wound up really falling in love with it. I mean, you can't, I can't express how much fun I have talking to authors. I have my favorite author is Matthew Dix, and he's been on the podcast twice. And to be able to get to sit and talk with him and say, I read your book and like, oh my goodness, I love your characters. And I mean, I get a lot of joy out of that. So, I mean, I do target people that I like, that I've enjoyed your work. And I guess I somewhat chase the people that I've liked something, whether it be a movie or a book. But it's great fun for me to sit and chat with you guys. So I mean, I thank you. I mean, it really is my pleasure to do this.
Well, you do it very well,
Yes.
and you're very personable, and it's easy to talk to you. So it's just interesting to me that there's been such a proliferation of these podcasts, and whether it's on the air, I mean, visual or just audio. It's sort of a new amazing industry.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it popped out of nowhere, but I think that's the beauty of how the entertainment business has evolved. Whereas it used to be you were subject to only, if you got the nod from an executive to do a TV show or, a radio station to come on and be an announcer there. That was the only way you got to broadcast. And now, because of all these platforms, you're able to just make a decision and just do it.
It's great. Well,
keep enjoying.
yes, absolutely. And we'll keep enjoying you.
Thank you. We're going to say goodbye. If you could stay just for 1 second, I actually have a question to ask off camera.
Happy to.
So I'm going to say goodbye, everybody. And thanks for joining us. And remember to subscribe if you're not a subscriber.